We have an awesome group right here. Wes is going to be kind of facilitating, moderating it, and I'll let them all introduce themselves and go into more of this. Cool.
That's me. Zibby Onstrato, but I go by ZB, Chief Strategy Officer for DKB, innovative, based out of Frisco, North Dallas. I'm brand new to DKB. March will be my first year. Been in the MSP space my entire career. I was with the previous MSP, Caltech, based out of West Texas for about 17 years. Built a security practice there, kind of relevance here. Grew that to 25 security analysts, 10 million revenue. Got acquired by Integris, and then left there and joined DKB. So have a little bit of experience in growing and what we're talking about, hopefully.
Is that Rashad?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Net Lynch. I've been in IT for 27 years. So I started out as an engineer. If anybody remembers back in the late 90s, Gateway Computers. We used to work for them. Yes, during Y2K. That was fun.
The cow boxes.
The cow boxes, yes. And then I was a sysadmin at a school district. That's where I built my first production Linux server as an email server, which is loads of fun. So I stayed in the engineering space for a while, and then I opened an MSP about 17 years ago. So I was an MSP owner, and I love the space so much that after Hurricane came through and decided my business wasn't going to be in that location anymore, I stayed in the space, and I've worked for small companies and I've worked for large companies. Right now I work for a company called VC3. We are the largest pure MSP in North America. We're in, I think, 42 states and like 7 provinces of Canada, if I remember correctly. But we try to keep that local feel wherever we go. So we have local teams that handle whatever clients really need. And I'm a VCSO. So I live and breathe compliance. I live left of Boom, my left of Boom. So my days are filled with all sorts of security questions and advising and dealing with compliance and stuff, which is actually pretty awesome.
Dustin Mullender. So I am the managing partner of Clear Guidance Partners. This is my second MSP. Started it in 2019. We're mostly law firm focused, which actually came up because nobody wants to deal with law firms. So I was like, that's a good niche. And we are at 29 people. These days I have an insurance business also I split my attention with. So I am currently trying to get out of the CEO role at the MSP as soon as I can, building the team up, letting them take everything off of my plate.
Fantastic. So we have an awesome panel. I can guarantee you will have more questions and we'll have time to answer. So if we don't get to a question that you have, store it up here and then go chat with them in the party barge, because these three you guys are my all-stars. I mean that. And so good friends with all of you guys, and I know your capabilities. So Net, to start us, what I'd love for you to talk about a little bit is going into how many of you as an MSP would love to go into like a security-focused MSP or really double down into your security practice? Yeah, so usually all the hands go up. So I'd love for you just to give some input from your perspective, having done this and led through this. How can MSPs of any size start working through that and go that direction?
So first, let's define these terms. MSP, right? IT services, that's what most of us offer. MSSP offers security services, usually do not offer IT services, usually are co-managed only. And usually they're co-managed to enterprises. If you're an MSP that is focusing on security, that's called a security first MSP. So just to make sure we're all talking the same language. So first and foremost, if you want to have those security conversations with your clients, you need to make sure that you understand what the threats are, how we defend against them. Clients always have objections because they don't understand. And I will tell you first and foremost, don't get technical on them. We, as technical people, we want to talk tech because we understand that's how these products work. That's how clients are going to be protected in whatever way. So it's really important that you talk their language, that you speak to your clients as business owners or whatever roles that they have to the things that are important to them, not the things that are important to you as the provider. And from there, most of us are like, we preach about EDR and MFA, right? Everybody beats those drums for a reason. But going beyond that, you yourselves have to get that confidence. And the way you do that is by researching, studying, and most importantly, I would say pick a compliance. Like CIS version 8 is really easy to do, and that's a framework, of course. But build your stack against a framework. Because then it's not just, oh, Net dreamed it up, so Net's best practices are these. No, I use this framework, and then I add in some things where I see some gaps. So that way you become a person who, I hate the term trusted advisor because it's so overused, but they start trusting you because you've already done all the research for them. You've picked a framework, you've built out all the tools that they're going to need, all the configurations that they're going to need to change, etc., all the policies and procedures they're going to need to maintain, and then you're going to them with on a platter saying, this is what you need to do and this is why.
I love that. ZB, you want to elaborate? Because you've taken 2 MSPs and done what Nat has just talked about, sort of building a security practice. Now, you're a little different in the sense that you don't have the army of VC3 behind you, if I may say so. So you're having to build your talent as you go. And the reality is there's some things that DKB can do, and there's certain things that DKB probably can't do, right?
Sure.
Just based on size and complexity and growth. So walk us through how you handle those hurdles and what advice you'd give to MSPs.
Yeah. So, starting out when I was at Caltech building our security stack and security offerings there was looking at really aligning with your customer base. The benefit that I had at Caltech was we were primarily focused on financial institutions. So that's easy because they have regulations that to sit by, right? And so within that, you target what are the requirements, what are their pain points, figuring out, designing your solution to meet their needs. Because if you can solve all their pain points, well, that's an easy yes. And you make it easy. We were talking earlier, I think in Blackboard conversation about pricing. Like, how do you make pricing, that whole process easy to buy, easy to sell? So designing what can you do and how do you mature your staff along the way to deliver the services that you have that's aligned with that customer base. And so that within Caltech was a pretty easy process. We knew what the regulations were, we knew what the requirements were, we knew what the pain points were, and we had staff to be able to throw at it and begin to build up. So we built that up pretty fast. With DKB, to give you an idea, DKB's total staff are about 60 employees, so much smaller, different customer bases now. So now you're in different verticals, and so we're looking at what makes the most sense. We were talking about minimum security requirements yesterday, and one of the groups is like, are you bringing on customers and set in place minimum security requirements? And then how do you expand on that? Well, if you look at that stack, what is that stack? And do you have the staff to support it? Too often we get this shiny new toy out there that we're buying, like it's going to solve all of our problems. But are we really looking at how do we operationalize that? Meaning, do we have processes in place? Do we have ticket processes, workflows? How do we train our staff on it? Do we have the relationship with the vendor? There's lots of vendors that are here. Like, do we have a relationship with them to ask them, okay, how do we train our staff? What's the best way to do this? Because I was talking to one of them last night, the way that we utilize certain systems is really not the way it was designed to be used, which is causing ourselves some more problems. So not having that initial training to design the solution up front can be painful, but that's where you really partner with the vendors you're buying those tools from. If you're not successful with the tool, you're going to pull it out, right? So they're incentivized to make sure that you're successful with that tool and that process. But a lot of times you're relying on those relationships to help build up your process early on.
It's good. Anything you want to add to from your size MSP, Dustin, in terms of, or even, I'll give you 2 options, either add to that, or you guys have had a heavy focus in legal, right? So is there a difference there, what you noticed in being very vertical niched, like ZB was talking about at Caltech? So I'll let you answer.
Yeah, sort of 2 parts. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, the second MSP. So my first one was super a la carte. This is going to sound familiar, I think, to most people here. Is, okay, here's a firewall, like, ooh, we got this shiny new MDR, I want you to buy it, that kind of thing. So the second time around, I love the security first MSP because that's what we call ourselves, is I did everything bundled into the stack. So all the way to, we're going to put a 48 firewall in every one of your offices. And the reason for that is I actually give credit to my business partner. He's a ex-special forces guy, so he always says the difference between like the grunts and the special forces is I practice it 10,000 times. I get the basics done right every time. So I can't compete with these guys on, like, I'm not going to go against him or her on, this fancy compliance and stuff. But what we can do is consistently across every one of our clients having that baseline security, right? Our baseline might be lower, but we can be really consistent. We can be really good about it. So that's where we focus a lot of our energy. Talking CyberFox, somebody was asking about laps earlier. We could be using laps. My thing on CyberFox that we love is it's an easy button for the security. I got 29 people we can't build out, right? I can't compete with Blackpoint doing MDR kind of thing. So it's what makes us more consistent, what makes us more reliable, what makes it I don't mean easy in like the shortcut, but it's, again, I got 29 people. We got to put our resources somewhere. So that's been our approach to security, is get that good baseline, make sure it's consistent and enforced.
It's great. So let's shift a little bit. One of the big focuses I've seen in 2024, and I think you three would agree as well, is not the emergence of compliance as a service, but deeper, right? You have FTC safeguards that just came out. CMMC rulings have been clarified. We're still not quite there yet. But I think more across the board, I think we'd all agree that MSPs have to be better at compliance and helping their clients with this. I'd love, ZB, for you to start, and then Net, for you to kind of chime in too.
Yep.
What is that looking like for you as a compliance as a service for your MSP?
Yes, I mean, one thing that I've seen the focus on has been shifting. Like, everybody knows we have to do security. Like, your customers see that. They see the headlines also. They don't want to be the next victim. So everybody has an idea of, like, we have to be doing security. Well, now what's pushing it more is like cyber insurance. Cyber insurance has these different requirements. You've got to check that box. Who's checking the box? So if the tools are in place, if we're doing our job of delivering the services and the security tools, now it's more shifting the focus on the GRC aspect. Are those tools configured properly? Are they actually deployed? Who has oversight on the reporting for those tools, for your admin access, things like that. So that also, again, goes back to the conversations we have with our partners and our vendors. Do we have the reports and data coming out of there that to help us meet the compliance requirements of our customers? Because they may have to have a report that they're looking at on a quarterly basis, or maybe it's a monthly basis, whatever. Do we have that report that we can give them that says, hey, where before you have this compliance requirement and you're having to do this manually, and you have a spreadsheet you're tracking this information on, like, we do that for you, and we have a report that supports it that says, yeah, we are doing this thing for you. But a lot of that conversation is now shifting. But how do we know what are the things we're focusing on? Well, look at your customer base. What's driving their compliance requirements? If they're in certain industries, CMMC, okay, how knowledgeable are we in that space? FTC safeguards, what are the different requirements? Or even just cyber insurance, like, okay, what are the requirements for cyber insurance that your customer has to know and do? It's more on oversight, and who has that oversight? Do you have that oversight internally for your own systems? And can you do that for your customer and provide that to them and say, yeah, you can trust us, and here's a report that says we're doing what we say we're doing.
That's great. Net?
Ditto. And one of the reasons I really love compliance, because it's not optional.
Right.
The clients have to do it. It's not just because Net said so. And so I'll talk about this a little bit more later, or we could, of course, have sidebar later, but I really love being in the compliance space because I don't need to convince a business owner that they should be doing more security to protect themselves, because that's what they should be doing. I love having the conversation of you have to. It's not an option, and there are consequences if you don't follow it, and you get caught not following it. So for me, when I look at GRC and clients, for me, it's about translating the technology or the requirement into everyday language that the client understands, whoever your point of contact is, or points of contact at that client, and putting it into a way that they understand, that they can internalize. They understand the language you're talking because you're not talking tech. Because we do have technical requirements, of course, but we also have administrative and managerial requirements, right? And those are the things that we need their input on. And a lot of people think compliance is so dry. It doesn't have to be, right? You can find ways to make it more interesting by personalizing it, by telling stories and analogies and metaphors and all those fun things. Because if you're dry and you're just like, these are the requirements you have to do, right? None of us like that. So it's important that not only you know these, but you can make them relatable.
It's good.
I'm going to be the odd man out on this one. So we avoid a lot of, again, going back to, I'm a lot smaller than these guys. So one of the things is we deliberately avoid a lot of compliance stuff by not taking clients in those industries on. I won't touch medical. There's also some personal trauma there. I started off working in IT in a hospital, so, but around that kind of stuff. So right now we do financial, like investment firms, stuff like that. There's a couple frameworks there. But we have 2 clients right now that are in manufacturing that are both talking about going CMMC. And at that point, our thing was like, okay, great. Just so you guys know, like, we're going to help you find a new MSP in that case, because we can't go and implement all that stuff. That's not, law firms don't care about CMMC. That's 70% of my revenue. So I'm going to have to price them so stupid high. It wouldn't make sense. And then I also don't want that liability. We're dedicating people. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So for me is we're purposely avoiding certain compliances by just not taking on clients in that industry.
You're going to say no?
That is smart.
Which is absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
That's great.
If
yeah.
it's not your area of expertise, it's important that you have that sales discipline
Yep.
to be able to say, this is not a good fit.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And my sales guy hates me that he gets these calls. And I'm like, cool, medical office, go call James up. He loves them.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
First of all, let me put I'm a sales guy. I do a lot of work with attorneys. We're in New York. They have compliances in New York. I know
Yeah.
they don't in a lot of other places, but they have the data sets that are highly valuable.
Yeah.
Don't you find it a little bit risky to your own MSP that you're not pushing them to be more compliant, even if they're not necessarily I use a lot of what I talk about in New York is the DFS compliance.
Yep.
I think I have 2 clients that are actually subject to it.
Yeah.
But-
We're talking like the NYC 500 RR.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then Shield affects everybody. I was just talking to my partner earlier. They're effectively the same. It's what triggers the event on those 2 compliances that different, and who is subject to. So I go into my law firms and I'm talking about DFS compliance. I say you're not subject to this, but if we map you to this and we make you compliant,
Right.
you have no worries. Don't you find a concern that if you're not kind of having that conversation with your particularly law firm clients, that there's an exposure to both you and them?
Yeah, so we're still doing, so we're built around, we're moving to CIS controls rather, combined with cyber insurance. I'm an insurance nerd, sorry guys. But yeah, so we're still doing it, but it's avoiding those other ones. So if again, medical company comes to me, is we have to do minimal HIPAA because the law firms have stuff, but like a doctor's office, I forget what's the covered entity, right? We don't know or deal with that part of it, and I don't want to add that to our duties. So we're still doing a high baseline of compliance, but not, what I'm purposely doing is avoiding having to deal with new types of compliance, if we can say no to certain clients. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So niching down into we're
Yes.
comfortable with these industries,
Yep.
and we're not going to go above and beyond that
Yeah.
and accept new because of the burden to scale.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have the big teams like these guys do. So yeah, specific to that, the 500 RR, we do have that baked into our stuff. So there's certain ones we do. I'm just avoiding. We're not going to do CMMC. We're not going to do medical, whatever other ones you want to. Car dealerships have the FTC safeguards.
That actually hits a lot of businesses.
Yeah,
They don't
that's
even
what I was
realize.
going to say.
Including
That's
law
yeah.
firms.
So I'll add on it, so we're in Texas, right?
No
Both of
laws
us.
there.
None. And so working in the financial space, we're under Texas Department of Banking. And so one of the key statements that the chief examiner for Texas Department of Banking said, we interviewed him, he says compliance does not equal security.
Correct.
Compliance does not necessarily
Compliance checks.
equal security. Right. So you can be doing all the right things by your customer, doing the security, elevating the security stance without, directly aligning to whatever compliance framework.
And just where I'm
And
not
so-
telling my clients, hey, you follow my direction,
Right.
you're compliant. I'm just saying I'm mapping that compliance to what you
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. But again, that takes extra effort, especially like looking at CMMC and different aspects of that. There's a lot of things that, if we're all going to be in that space, get ready.
Yeah.
So I think that brings up a good question, Ned. I'd like to ask this to you. What do you do in a situation where if compliance only sets the floor and good security frameworks, what they need to do from a risk-based approach sets the ceiling, how do you handle it when a client says, no, I just want to do the bare minimum. I need to check the boxes and that's it. That's all I want to do.
And there are clients like that they don't really care about security. They think it's just an expense because it'll never happen to me. I'm too small. I don't have anything the bad guys want, right? We've all heard that. It's still going to happen whether you have compliance or not. And so in my mind, I call it compliance plus. It's like you described. The compliance, the requirements to be compliant with whatever framework or compliancy it is, and then the plus is all the gaps that you find. So for me, when I'm dealing with clients as a security advisor, I don't tell the clients which are which. I present my entire plan, my security roadmap to them cohesively. So unless if they specifically ask, I'll tell them. Unless if you have somebody asking, well, which control does this map to?
Yeah.
Right? Nobody asked that question. So I give it to them and I don't give them the option. Because at the end of the day, when something happens because they, for whatever reason didn't want to add that extra security, you know which way the fingers are pointing. So I'm putting it in front of them in a way that they don't have or have less of an option to object to it.
That's great. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and then I'd love to get some more thoughts from all of you as well. One to you, Dustin, we were talking about earlier this idea of the future of how important fundamentals are more than ever before, right? Especially because we have this sprawl now of apps everywhere, whether it's things that, shadow IT that we bring in, the desire for clients to bring in their own line of business apps, the ability for me to OAuth into any software platform off I go, the plethora of devices everywhere, right? So talk to us a little bit about standardizing the stack, standardizing settings, standardizing configurations, and how important that is.
Yeah, so again, going back to, I've lived both sides of the house. Again, a la carte, we had 8 different kinds of firewalls at my old MSP. It was like, cool, you got a brand new Sonic wall? Like, we can support that, right? Ooh, ASA, cool, that's fine. We don't need to replace it. The issue there is you suddenly are, you're having to learn. That's the biggest part for me, again, at our size, is can I get, okay, great, my firewall guy right now, I got 3 people who are really, really good at FortiGate. We start adding more, well, maybe... Wes isn't as good at Sonic walls and ZB's not as good at ASAs. Like, you just get, you're seeing these different things, so you're not as consistent across it. And then we've had sorry guys, my brain isn't working today. Having the help desk as well, to where it's like they walk in every client, they know they're going to see Duo, they're going to see Auto Elevate, that kind of thing. So the training side of it's a lot easier. The writing the SOPs, all that kind of stuff, it just suddenly does a massive reduction on your workload, because every one of the clients, it's here's what you get. And we were just talking on, how do you tell the clients that you need this, that kind of thing. Again, we bundle it all in because just that efficiency of scale, it makes it a lot easier. We can bring in a tier 1, we can train them up pretty quickly, and they're not seeing new things for more than like 90 days, right? At that point, they've been exposed to all the tools, they probably had tickets come in. So that has been that's probably been the most important part of consistency, has just been, here's the tool set that's going to be on every client.
It's great. When so you mentioned onboarding and getting folks up to speed, and consistency of a stack for that delivery there. What about when you bring that first person in, ZB? How do you get them up to speed, or maybe the second or third person, right? I think a lot of MSPs, it's very hip to hip. It's very like, we'll train as we go, and we'll try to do the best we can as we go, ask good questions, and you're on your own, baby. Like,
Can you start taking tickets tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow, today. We start paying today. No, that's a real challenge, especially like if you're not, Dustin, if you're not standardized on the different tool sets, and then the level of service you're providing customers, like, well, what does this customer have versus what this customer have? If they don't have the same set of services that you're providing your customer base, and that becomes really difficult for them to know what are they supposed to have, what are we supposed to configure, even from an onboarding perspective, like a new customer, and where they go take those support tickets on as well. So we have a combination of, there's some training videos that we have recorded that the other staff have recorded for them, KB articles tied into PSA. One of the things that we found very useful for our team was like your most senior guys are the ones that are creating the process. They're establishing, what workflows happen. They suck at documenting. So typically what we do is we'd pair them up with like either a second level or level one guy that would go in there and start documenting, either record a Teams meeting or whatever, create the documentation around that. But now you take that KB article and you tie it into workflows and ticket templates with that We're ConnectWise shop. So if a ticket comes in from this tool, it automatically gets assigned or linked to a KB article that's referencing like how to do normal functions. And as you grow in the maturity of the whole ticket workflows from those different tools, you can say, okay, this kind of alert and this kind of ticket, here's a KB article. So you try to make it as easy as possible for them to take tickets that they have never seen before, because you have some supporting knowledge that they can use. Now you look at all the different tools that are available with MSP Stack that will do that for you automatically. It's like, oh, this is great. We were doing this manually and workflows and everything back then, but it's a combination of the onboarding, training content early on, but you still pair them up. What we were doing would pair up. We call them mentors. One of our senior guys was assigned, okay, this guy, he's your mentor for this guy. So if they have a question, they know they can, but also builds teams. Like you're building the team, their environment, and they're comfortable to go to this person because they know like you're assigned. If you have a question, go to this guy. He's going to help you out, answer the question, and work out the solution on it. That created a tremendous bond with that team and helped grow, but also identified areas where we kind of sucked at documentation or processes as well. But combination of those two has been turned out to be very successful for us.
I like that on the ticket training.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
That's great. So, Nat, one of my favorite questions that I think is critical to ask is so if you haven't already seen, the big theme that we're talking about is how do we grow and scale a security practice, right? That's the big theme. One of the big problems that I see MSPs have a lot is a conflict of interest problem, right? Here's how it manifests. It manifests with, I feel like in my MSP, every time I go to a client, their arms are crossed. They don't want to move. They don't trust me. They don't want to listen. They don't want to buy into what they feel. I feel like they're making me like a used car salesman. That's how I feel that they're making me feel. And one of the big problems when you really rip into the process of the MSP is we have a conflict of interest, and oftentimes we take the VCSO, the person that's doing security strategy, the person that's doing compliance, and we ask them to be, let's be honest, in a sales role. We ask them to give a quota. They're the ones that are engaging in this sales-first relationship. Even if they're not an account manager, they still have the expectation because of the burden of leadership and even the history of the way we've always done managed IT. Security has changed that game, and so we have a conflict of interest that sometimes comes in. And I've noticed sometimes when you unpack where that arms crossed, don't tell me what to buy, it comes from that background. So can you elaborate more on that and how MSPs can maybe solve for that problem? Because I think it's a huge challenge.
Yes. So before I became a VC, I was a VCIO, and I lived in the strategy space since I was the owner of an MSP, which of course you wear a lot of hats when you're an MSP owner, and I stayed in the strategy space. And I worked for companies that I had to carry a quota. And I worked for companies that I did not carry a quota. I do not carry a quota today. And I love being able to say to clients, I don't work on commission. So you can be sure that the recommendation I make is based on what you need technologically, what's best for you, for your organization. Clients love that. They eat that up. And you know what? I get projects, I get tons of pull through, I get MRR add-ons because they know that my recommendations are coming from a technical place, not from an account management place. So I think it's important that when you're going through this path of growing your MSP and getting to the point where you need a VCIO and then eventually a VCSO, that strongly consider not giving them a quota.
Yeah.
Give them a bonus periodically, whatever that looks like, just like you would anybody in the company, but it gives them credibility with the clients. So, and I've people that I've trained, I tell them, when I hand clients off to you or whatever, tell them that you don't work on commission, right? You're introducing yourself. It's the perfect time to lay that expectation.
Love it. You want to add anything to that?
I think a lot of times leaning back onto the framework. So we're establishing like, what's the goal? What's the goal we're trying to reach? What's the goal the customer's trying to reach? And relying back on that, it's like, that makes that conversation quite a bit easier.
Yeah.
But a lot of that also has to do with like education to not only do your staff that's delivering the service have to be educated and trained. One of the things that I saw that we were doing a lot of as we started really scaling up the business in Caltech was we were doing just as much training for ourselves and our level 3 engineers more than our customers. Because yes, we would sit in with a sales presentation with the customer about what it is we're offering, what we're doing. But if that's not scalable, like I have security guys who have a very dedicated job, they're very technical. I want them focused on that job, not in these sales conversations. And so, but if we're able to effectively train our salespeople and our essentially VCIOs to know what it is we're doing, the products, and what the challenges are that the customer's facing, so they can kind of dig in and see, okay, is that going to be a challenge for this customer that we need to address? That makes a world of difference in as far as like scaling your sales ability from that point, because you're educating your staff that now you're multiplying that out.
Right. One other thing I'll add is whether it's VCIO or VCSO, whichever position you have in your organization, technology roadmaps are gold. And I'll tell you why. If you have an organization that does budgeting, which most organizations do, they want to know how much they can anticipate spending. So if you build out a technology roadmap for 2 years for security, 5 years for IT infrastructure, it's not a question of if they're going to do it, it's when. So it's just a matter of, you can't do it this quarter, what about this quarter? We'll just move it. So you're still getting the project, you're still getting the MRR, whatever goes with that, but it's just, they already have that mental commitment because every time you pull out that roadmap, hopefully you're doing it at least quarterly, you're reviewing it with them, they're seeing it over and over and over, they're silently accepting it. And then when you say, okay, this quarter we're going to do these things that we've been talking about for the last year, okay.
On that, do you use those for financial modeling for your MSP? Like
Sure.
revenue projection?
Yes, absolutely.
So you generally have high level of confidence that those clients will execute along that schedule.
Yes, as long as your technology roadmap is solid and it's more comprehensive, right? Because just for ease of use, if you do a 3-year cycle or a 5-year cycle of refreshing all of your workstations and your servers, if you have physical servers, your switches, your firewalls, right? Everybody needs to do those life cycle replacements, right? And then you start adding in maybe now we're going to add MFA, which they've been objecting to, right? Or maybe now we're going to add a SIM, which they haven't had before, right? So in your technology roadmap, you're not only doing your life cycle stuff, you also give yourself the opportunity to introduce more security in kind of a covert way. They're seeing it, you're explaining it, you're not hiding it, but you're just not making it a topic where they can object.
You're also getting them to buy in without having to spend.
Exactly.
When it comes time to spend, they've already bought it.
Exactly.
High level of confidence is also using your win rate to factor that in. So if you,
All they do is win, win, win.
well, there you go. I'll leave that at that. 100% confidence.
So on our side of it, something interesting that we did that seems to be, it's been about a year now, seems to be working well, is we do have quotas, but not in the way you think. So we did originally, go back 2 years ago, we've had 2 to 3 VCIOs at all times. So it was originally the traditional, I listened to the talking heads and I was like, cool, you got 30K a month in projects you need to sell kind of thing. What ended up happening was there's a couple of people that have always mentored me and said, you need to incentivize the behavior you want. So we sat down and looked, and what we were having is they were skipping meetings that, oh, this client's about to do something, so I'm going to go get this meeting done. Hey, I just sold a $35,000 project. And I'm like, yeah, but you neglected the hell out of all your other clients. Mm-hmm. So what we've moved to now is their quota is whenever we dug in was you have these meetings, stuff naturally happens. Like Net's formula right there, that's perfect. It works. So we've moved to incentivizing them now off of the meetings happening. So they get paid based off of the QBRs that they do. The revenue doesn't matter. They go in, they come back and say, hey, I didn't sell Jack. Cool, that's going into your commission. Great job. So getting them to have those meetings, and then again, just naturally it works out.
And to that point, by not being revenue driven, they don't have commission breath.
Yes.
Right.
They know they have to take the meeting, be productive. Yeah. They don't have to walk out with a
They'll
dollar.
push you about the meeting, which is good because sometimes you have to do that. Well, I don't have anything to talk about. Like, no, we need to sit down and do it.
Right.
But yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it just naturally flows. The revenue comes.
The other thing I'll say to flip that, if you want to test the symptoms to see if you have a problem here inside your organization, go ask your folks, hey, are we road mapping and budgeting for every single client we have? Most MSPs will say, nope, we made 2 or 3 high priority clients, that's it. Okay, so why are we not? The answer you'll usually get back is, boss, we don't have time for that. What that really means is, boss, that's not a priority. We have 24 hours a day. We have time for anything we want to do. The question is, what are the priorities? So if it's not a priority, why is it not a priority? And one of the big reasons why it might not be a priority is we've incentivized them otherwise. Mm-hmm. Or we have misbalanced them and don't give them the ability to do it because we've loaded account management, that expectation on or whatever. But I really encourage you to go back and really understand what's happening from a role and responsibility level, from a compensation. I love that we're talking about this. I think that's one of the most healthy things that we can do.
The not have time piece is funny. I had a guy, great guy. Luckily, we're still on good terms. Terrible account manager employee. I had to let him go. But he was a virtual CIO. And what made this finally click for me was the one time I was talking, his name was Pat. And so we were sitting down and I was kind of running through some of the stuff on the clients, this, that, and the other. He's like, yeah, I sold this project. I was like, all right, when was the last time you talked to, these 2 firms? And he just sat there and he's like, that's probably been a year. I said, dude, what the hell? Like, that's your literal job. What are you supposed to be doing? I'll still remember, this was part of the reason I wasn't there anymore. He sits back like this. He goes, because they're not going to buy shit. I'm like, all right, fair.
It might be fair.
But yeah, so that was the eye-opening where I was like, okay, we're incentivizing the wrong behavior on this. That he's trying to get the quota and he was successful on what we told him, the quiet part of what to do, right? Go out, farm for project revenue. So that was the big eye-opening whenever he was gone like 60 days after that. But that was a big thank you to
One other thing about your QBRs, and whoever's handling your strategy, whether it's you as a business owner or if you have VCIO staff, you don't want to be talking about tickets. If you have a conversation about tickets, you get too far in the weeds, you're not talking about strategy, right? If you want to have a meeting talking about tickets, have a meeting talking about tickets that is different from your QBR. QBR should be about strategy. And whoever's handling your strategy should set the tone for the meeting, keep it on track. So if a client starts going off in a direction, talking about a ticket that was put in last week, absolutely, you know what, let's schedule some time to talk about that because I want to dig into that, but let me do some research on it first. So it's really important that when you have those QBRs, you stay on task.
Well, one of the questions that somebody submitted was around, it was like, how do we generate sales or something like that? That's this is one of my favorite rants to go on, is the MSPs, like us sitting up here on the sales side, is if you're one of those MSPs where, oh yeah, we come in, we do a QBR, we show you a patch report, a ticket report, and inventory. Like on the sales side, we're out there eating your lunch, guys. That's what everybody says. The clients don't care for the most part. So talking about generating sales, that's an awesome one. Is we're going to do a quarterly meeting. It's required from you. We're going to sit down. We're going to look at the 5-year roadmap, 2-year security thing. We don't usually talk about the tickets. If there's an issue, you can bring them up. We want to address that stuff when it happens. But there are so many MSPs out there that are still doing that QBR where it's just a ticket review. Clients are over that. And so talking about if you want to generate sales, that's a great piece. Bring that up specifically. That's not what we do here at blah, blah, blah.
Right. And when I've had VCIO staff below me, that was one of my big training points for them, was what should be in a meeting, what should not be in a meeting, and how to curb those conversations. So now we're also talking about soft skills, right?
Yeah.
When you have a VCIO or VCSO, your technical background, super important. Understanding the technology, absolutely important. But if that person can't talk to people and relate to people and adjust based on their audience, etc., they're going to have a tough time with it, right? That may not be the person to have in that seat. It might be a good person, but just the wrong seat.
Our most successful, and historically for me, is I just gave her equity in the company. She's a partner now. Sarah. She's non-technical. She was an architect before this, came on as a project manager, and clients absolutely love her because they're like, she doesn't come in here and geek out and talk on patching reports and stuff. She just talks only business. So
Yep.
And going back to your hatred of the term trusted advisor, but she is a trusted advisor,
Right.
Because she's earned that right, and the only way you earn that right is when the board or the decision makers say, "Come on in, let's talk." So
Yep.
I love that. We have time, maybe time for 2 to 3 questions. So we'll go right back on over here.
Probably comment first on the roadmaps development with that to look how. If you're doing asset management properly, you already have also that bad anything. Bring that in. I mean that, and then say if it's 3 to 5 years out, they're
Right.
out. You should call it Adam. Question right now is struggling ones us, and I guess they're similar sizes to we are, but you can put the same stack in for a new client. Like how do you charge for that? Do you charge that? So you can go on the what's what?
Yeah. Seat price, we're between 200 to 300 a seat right now. As far as charging for that, I have no ego from the standpoint. I'll tell you guys, if you just want to talk to me tonight about all the ways I've screwed up, I got a great long list of it. We're in the process of fixing that. So the real world answer, the last 5 years has been, Dustin, I think this is a really good client, so I'm not going to charge an onboarding fee so we can close the deal. I was jealous of David Bellini getting up here yesterday talking about profit because he's just absolutely killing us. Compared similar numbers except for the profit part of it. So going forward is we have a new project manager. She's kind of scoped out. Here's the typical hours we spend. And then we're just using one of the things I don't want to do. There's a really successful MSP in Austin, Dave Duran, if you know Texas Systems Group. We're frenemies, I guess is a good way to put it. We're on good terms, but he did the opposite. It was, we're going to come in, we need domain admin, we're going to scope. All of his stuff was on budget, perfect, this, that, and the other. But the other side of it is for like 10 years is I beat him on every deal because I just kind of came in, all loosey-goosey with it. There's a happy middle ground. Huh?
He made more money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's my point is there's some happy middle ground that we're moving towards. So I don't know if that was helpful. I'm telling you, I do it really wrong right now, but we're trying to get better.
I'll give you some input on kind of what we did at Caltech was you do build out the scope, because there is value for you to go and deploy your tools to the customer, right? You can't deliver the service of your tools, your systems that's onboarded, and there's a cost associated with that. Somebody's got to pay for that. So unless you're going to take that in the lost margins, so what we started doing is scoping it out. It's a project, right? So professional services, scope it out. If the cost is going to be, really, really big, then one thing you can do is like, okay, if you're going to give sales discounts, you got to recognize that. Well, how do you recognize that? Yeah. If the agreement the customer's on, it's a 3-year agreement, well, you can spread that out over 3 years and not in 1 month, So looking at it from the financial aspect of it, if you have, if you want to offer some different creative ways of doing financing, it was like, okay, can you add that cost of onboarding that customer to your monthly cost and adding that to a monthly cost of that customer in exchange for that? That way it lowers your upfront cost. So different ways to do that, and we were using all the different functions on that. Because if you give salespeople the ability to discount onboarding, every time you can give it away.
Or dumb owners.
Every time, yeah. Especially because they'll give the onboarding away, like, well, we're going to win this customer. It's like, well, yeah, but we just lost tremendous amount and resources for onboarding a new customer, and that there's a cost associated with that.
Also, this makes me think, Nat, I'd love for you to chat about this a little bit too. One of the things that I think traps MSPs is we've been taught everything has to be a monthly per user price. Everything has to be managed service. And when it comes to security, we absolutely kill our profitability from that, because some things just cannot be done that way.
Right.
Because it might be a 2-person employee or a 400-person company that we're working with. And sometimes the costs maybe are not the same, but they just don't come down to a per user price. They have to be project or T&M. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I get engaged with pre-sales engineering with my AEs and with our strategic advisors. And, that's something that comes up a lot, is that when you have a package, when you create a bundle, right? Clients love bundles. It makes it easy. Choose A, B, or C. And when you do that, you're pricing it at a certain seat count. So, right, let's say you pick 50 user seats, right? We 20 to 50 users kind of average. So you pick the high end because that's, where you want your sweet spot to be. But then when you get a 10-person organization, the numbers don't work. You get a 200-person organization. That's not really fair, right? It's too much in your favor. So consider that when you're thinking about doing bundles, right? Consider doing, maybe a base package with just like your elemental stuff, your foundational items that everybody should have, like EDR, and then do the other things as add-ons, and you can scope them per engagement. And then you're going to get a fair price for everybody involved. I'm big on fairness. I don't like feeling like I'm taking advantage of anybody. So I'm big on that. If it's fair for the client, they're going to trust you more.
It's a math problem. To me, it was a math problem. So we ran across the same situation. So we were servicing community banks, and they typically are, well, community banks is small business, 25 employees, pretty common, 50, that's a big bank, right? And so when we're looking at that, we're designing our bundles. We're basing it off, okay, what's our target? Like, what's our most common customer, what that we're going to win on the most of the time? And then when you do have a very small customer, because you look at the very small banks, they could be 15 employees. Well, financially, it's not going to make sense to them. Problem is, they still have to do the same thing these mega banks have to do. Yep. So that's a cost of business. And for us to provide that, we can't deliver it at a much lower price. Mm-hmm. So even if we go in and sell into a tiny little customer, we would have minimums like, hey, I'm sorry, you have 10 employees, 15 employees, you still have to pay the 25 user minimum, because that's the minimum. The way we'd scale that out is on the higher end customers that are, we had preset discounts that we would offer. Our sales people were pre-authorized to give these discounts. That was it, very set, based on volume. So once they got over to 150 to 200 employees, now they have predefined discounts they can do, because that's a volume discount at that point. Because we've already ran the numbers based on our projections, hidden margin goals, like, okay, we can still, once it scales out, you have efficiencies to scale there.
So let me add one more thing about bundles. We all love bundles. It makes life easier. However, think about this. Don't show them to your prospects. Ask probing questions. Understand their business, their needs, their requirements, their goals, and then you come out with a single recommendation. Because if you put bundles in front of clients, they don't know what they're looking at most of the time.
They get choice paralysis.
They get analysis paralysis, absolutely.
Or they pick the cheapest one, which is the worst.
They pick the cheapest thing because they feel like, I'm too small, nobody's ever gonna, So don't give them that option. They're looking to you to make a recommendation for them because we are the experts in this area. They are not. And if you put choices in front of them, many times they're like, I don't know what to pick, so I'm not going to pick anything because I don't want to pick the wrong thing. So one recommendation based on all the conversations you've had with them about their business.
So we are at bingo. How many of you guys, is this good? How many of you have at least one big takeaway? That's it? Okay. We'll flip for more. Okay, good. All right, maybe you're slow to raise hands. So to me, a sign of a good panel is you can go twice as long, and I wish we could continue to go. We had only time for a few questions. So what that means is you got two things in front of you. One is take your one big thing, and tonight or whenever you're chatting with people, ask the other person, hey, what was your one big thing from that panel? I think that's an awesome thing to really kind of generate some conversation, and sometimes you hear something, it's like, oh yeah, man, that was great. Second thing is these guys and gals are going to be here for a while. They'll be here the rest of today and tonight. So pick them aside and go pick their brain. And then we have a break, 15-minute break between now and the next board session, which I'm sure Daniel's going to mention. So they'll be around. If you want to go chat with them real quick and get something answered, now is the chance. All right, Danielle.
Yep. Perfect. Awesome. Great job. Thank you guys for being here.